You are listening to the Justice in Heels podcast with me, your host, Danielle. Join me as I discuss interesting legal topics with inspiring female legal professionals who paved the way for the rest of us.
Welcome to another episode of the Justice in Heels podcast. Today we have Elizma from Elizma de Waal Attorneys with us. Elizma, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's quite interesting to be a part of a podcast. You know, it's my first time doing this, so I'm absolutely excited to get the ball rolling and have our discussion.
Amazing. Okay, so tell us in a nutshell, who are you? Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Okay, that question always makes me feel like I know absolutely nothing about myself. But so in short, I was born and raised here in Pretoria. I've always had a love for the law. Didn't necessarily think that I would go into studying law, but you know, life has a way of putting you where you need to be at the end of the day. So I started studying at the University of Pretoria, my LLB degree in 2014, completed it in 2017. Immediately went into articles at an amazing firm in Brooklyn, and I had the best principal. She taught me all facets of the law, which I really appreciated, together with actually teaching you how to run a firm and to manage clients and people. And so I honestly can say I am where I am today due to the principal that I had and the time she took in order to teach you everything with regards to running a firm. While doing articles, I also decided it was a good idea to start my master's in commercial and corporate law. So I also completed that during May 2020. And then in September 2020, I also decided I'm going to take the leap of faith and start my own firm. And so far, things have been going amazing. Cannot believe we're on the brink of almost being 3 years. It feels really unreal some days when you think that you've already been in practice for 3 years. But I must say I enjoy the learning of law. Every single day you get a new matter, new fact, you continuously learn. You will never know everything about every aspect of the law. So in all respects, I absolutely enjoy that about our profession.
That's amazing. Okay, now we know a bit more about you. And I'm so glad to hear that you actually had a good experience while completing your articles, because not many people can actually say that. To many people, articles are actually like the worst 2 years of their lives. So that's amazing.
I must say, for me, that I had the complete opposite experience. You know, I had an extremely good relationship with my principal. She taught me what it is to be a female practitioner within our legal field. She was also a sole practitioner at that stage. So, you know, at the end of the day, I gained a friend, but I also had a mentor that you can go and discuss everything with. And I think that's what made our situation different. It was not that whole thing of, listen, I'm your boss, I'm your principal. If you have a personal problem, leave it at home. She created such an open environment, an open space. And I think that's also what I'm trying to cultivate in my candidate attorney that started, you know, beginning of the year. I'm trying to cultivate that of, listen, yes, I'm your principal and I'm your mentor and everything, but don't shy away from using me as a support system as well. If you struggle, don't be scared to ask a question. Because I think a lot of candidate attorneys have this whole mindset of, I'm so scared of going to ask for help. I'd rather attempt to do it on myself. And then if it's a mess, it's a bigger mess to clean up at the end of the day. Instead of, okay, I tried it, I didn't succeed, but assist me, tell me how you want me to handle it. So from my perspective, that was what made my articles, honestly, for me, an amazing 2 years and learning curve to get to know everything of the law and not shy away from asking questions, even senior colleagues or advocates or whatever. If you have a question, ask it, because that's how you learn. You cannot learn in a vacuum, unfortunately. That's what I learned from my articles as well.
That's amazing. And I totally agree with you. So today we are discussing a very interesting topic, which is fertility law in South Africa, and more specifically, surrogacy and surrogacy agreements. So Elizma, can you tell us what is surrogacy?
Okay, so with surrogacy still being a very new aspect in our law, I mean, it was only regulated with the Children's Act that came into operation in totality in 2008. But surrogacy, in short, and I'm not going to go way too technical with the explanation, but it's basically an agreement that is reached between the commissioning parents as well as a surrogate mother, where the surrogate mother then agrees to carry a baby to term for the commissioning parents. And, in return, they provide her with support. Certain financial aspects can be supported. Although you may not go into commercial surrogacy, it needs to be an altruistic act. But it is quite interesting to see how people navigate the surrogacy aspect of, I'm willing to basically give you my body for 9 months, carry this baby for you to see you happy and fulfilled in your dream of becoming a parent, while the surrogate actually gives up her body for 9 months. So for me, that's where also the love of it comes in for me, to see, it's an ultimately good act that someone does for someone. So the agreement aspect, there's a lot of technicalities we need to look at and we need to concentrate. And it's sometimes difficult for, the layperson to understand what goes into a surrogate agreement, because it's not only one leg, but it's 2 legs. You have your agreement aspects and the laws thereof, and you have your court process as well. But to get back to just what is surrogacy, as a whole, it's basically an altruistic agreement between 2 parties or 3 parties, wherein one decides to carry a child on behalf of the other, the commissioning parents or the other sets of parties.
And what a totally selfless act that is. I can't even imagine how much you must care for someone, because in many instances, there's also total strangers that end up being surrogates for some parties who may not be able to conceive naturally. It's amazing. So is that one of the reasons why you are so passionate about fertility law?
Yes, because I think, for a lot of couples and for a lot of people, let's take a single individual male who has not found his partner, but, he has this desire of being a parent. It's no longer that the door's been shut in his face. He can go onto it to, get a surrogate, conclude an agreement, and still realize his dream of becoming a parent. Yes, it's kind of, some people, I've received the argument of it being impersonal due to it being artificial insemination and fertilization and all of that, which I also understand. But certain things are uncomfortable to talk about, but at the end of the day, you get your dream realized of becoming a parent. And for me, that's what makes it worthwhile. I mean, I can relate to couples struggling with infertility. I mean, you feel helpless and everything, and then all of a sudden this little knight in shining armor comes on your way stating that, listen, what your body can't do, mine can. I'm willing to, go on this path with you and on this journey with you in order to realize your dreams of becoming a parent. And for me, there's so little goodness left in our world. For me, that is ultimately, you see the true colors of someone when they actually is willing to walk this path with you. It's not only 9 months of carrying the baby. It's medical, doctor's visits, and it's fertility treatments, and it's all of that goes into this process. It's not only the 9 months, but they walk this journey with you. And for me, that ultimately shows that there really are still angels in this world that are willing to help other people just out of the kindness of their hearts, not for compensation, not to gain something, and that's what makes it special for me.
That's amazing. So what does an attorney specializing in fertility law do?
Okay, so usually it depends on a case-to-case basis. Sometimes if you have a commissioning couple or commissioning parent who does not have a surrogate in mind, you then can contact, there's certain agencies that deal with egg donation, sperm donation, and surrogate, mothers. So you then facilitate kind of the meeting and the greeting, It's kind of special to be in the process, of choosing a surrogate. Okay, I can communicate with this person. I would really like to choose them as my surrogate. So it's a very special process to be a part of. If the surrogate is chosen, then it comes down to the nitty-gritty and the legal aspects, the black letter law, where it is, let's negotiate the contract, what both parties are comfortable with, and then ultimately drafting the contract itself. Once that is concluded, then you move over to the court process, where now you draft your ex parte application, communicate with all the doctors, the psychologists, get all the medical reports and information together, draft your application, and then, ultimately get the court order for the parties to start with the artificial fertilization and for them to start their journey in the surrogate process. So it's nice seeing how the people develop a relationship going through the whole process to ultimately getting the court order. And you know what? Sometimes the surrogate is more excited for the court order than the commissioning parents are sometimes, So it's nice seeing that whole process and being a part of that process. And I mean, ultimately, who doesn't love getting a photo of a baby when they are born to say that, listen, of course, you assisted with this. This little one is you because you assisted us as a whole.
Oh, beautiful. So I assume this is a very expensive process as well, surrogacy.
Yes, so it's expensive in different facets. So you need to consult with psychologists. So, that's medico-legal reports that need to be obtained. Then you need your fertility doctor medico-legal reports. Then only you come to the actual negotiation and the application. So if I cannot give you a complete, estimate, but it is really an expensive process legal-wise. Then we haven't even turned to the fertility treatments, the IVF, and, the birth and all of those doctors' visits. So it's sad that it is such an expensive procedure to go on, because it does make it a little bit inaccessible to the average person or, to lower income households. But it's the facts of the matter, everyone has their fee for the work that they did, and everyone is entitled to their fee for the work that they did. And I mean, the reports that we gather are so extensive, and they're so, especially the psychological aspect. There's so many aspects that the psychologists need to touch on to make sure and to be able to tell the court you are emotionally and psychologically ready to embark on this journey, and that you understand the emotional, financial, and psychological aspects. That the reports get quite interesting sometimes if you go through everything and how they concluded their conclusion to be able to say to the court, the surrogate is ready, the commissioning parents are ready, we sign off on this. So on that aspect alone, the costs are quite exponential, because, I mean, what medical reports, the costs for medical reports go these days. But yeah, it's sad that it is this expensive for people to embark on this journey.
You mentioned something very interesting. So you said everybody has their fee, which is true. I actually recently spoke to someone who's not in law, and she asked, but why are attorneys so expensive? That was her words. And she said, why can't they just work for free? And I actually wanted to laugh. And I asked her, but listen, do you go to, let's say, the barber and expect them to cut your hair for free? And she said, no, of course not. And I said, yes, but why do you then expect the attorneys to work for free? Remember, they had to study for 4 years minimum, and then they had to do articles. It's a very long process, and it's also a very expensive process. So why would you go? Like, we are all entitled to making a living.
Yeah, that's quite true. And a lot of people, they don't realize that, it's not like we woke up one day and decided, hey, let's go. Let's go into law. We studied. If it was that easy, everyone would have done it, But unfortunately, some people study 5 years, some study 4. Then it's 2 years articles. It's 4 bar exams. It's literally, you need to get through your PLTs, and that's quite an expensive exercise just in order to get your PLT certificates. It's fees that you as a candidate, carry upon yourself, unless your principal decides to do the payments for you. And then, and at the end of the day, what people don't realize is we don't sell a product. We sell our time. If it takes me 5 hours to get to a point on one matter, and it takes me 3 hours to get to the same point on another matter, that's what you currently are billed for. It's not that I'm giving you a one set product. Here's your product for 2,000 Rand. Let's all go, go our separate ways. It's constantly the time that we need to spend in order to get the matter to fruition. And I think that's also the misconception that people have, because they constantly compare you to a doctor. It's like, yes, a doctor has a consultation fee. We also have consultation fees, but a doctor sees you, leaves the room, and it's over and done with. We see you, we phone you, it's email correspondence, it's correspondence between everyone. So at the end of the day, even though you think I've done this little bit of work, everything behind the scenes is what is actually going on. And I think a lot of people don't realize what goes on behind the scenes before I give you as my client a call to tell you, okay, so we have this on the table for settlement or whatever it might be.
100%, totally. So you mentioned that surrogates are not allowed to get any financial gain out of the agreement. But which costs must the commissioning parents then cover?
Okay, yeah. So as a whole, financing a surrogate is outlawed in terms of Section 301 of the Children's Act. But there are certain exceptions. The exceptions include basically the commissioning parents must cover the costs of their artificial insemination. They can cover the costs of birth. They can cover all the doctor's visits and all of that in order not to place the surrogate in a worse or financial position during the process. Above that, they can also cover insurance. Some commissioning parents take out life insurance on the part of the surrogate because, with the requirement that a surrogate must have had a live birth and she must have at least have one child of her own, you cannot now, due to pregnancy complications, pass away or be disabled or whatever and not have the backing of at least life insurance, because the surrogate also has a family to look after. It's not that she gets plucked from her total life for 9 months, put in an incubator, and that's all that's going to happen. So although she may not get physically paid, doctor's visits, medical expenses with regards to the birth, and all of that can be covered by the commissioning parents. Unfortunately, I think it's actually a fortunate aspect that the commissioning parents are the ones that are responsible for obtaining the court order. So the legal costs are to be carried by them, as well as getting the medico-legal reports and all of that together. They need to cover the costs, due to the fact that it is an altruistic act on the part of the surrogate, basically.
Makes sense. Interesting. So I think there's this misconception that the surrogate also has parental rights and responsibilities towards the child. Can you please tell us why it's not like that?
Okay, so when you act as a surrogate, you are most times not genetically related to the child. So you are just carrying the child on behalf of the commissioning parents. In terms of the Children's Act, it has been stated very, very clearly that a surrogate mother does not have parental rights and responsibilities towards the minor child, because it is actually someone else's child. The moment that child is born, the child must be handed over to the commissioning parents, or upon a reasonable time. If there's complications and things like that, then obviously you handle that basis on its own. So you are not a parent to this child. You only carried the child on behalf of the actual parents. Therefore, there is no such thing as parental rights and responsibilities on behalf of a surrogate. If you are, let's say there was an egg donated by you as the surrogate, then there is a genetic link. So there are certain parental rights and responsibilities that you then have, but that only comes to the part of your right to terminate the surrogate agreement. So if you have a genetic link, you can within, I speak under correction, but I think it's 60 days upon which you can still terminate the agreement. But that's also not going to be something that's going to be clear cut, because you're going to be fought about this. And that's one of the gray areas that we have within surrogacy itself, which there's no case law where it has happened as of yet. So there's no legal grounds where you can fight this matter on. At this stage, I actually went and looked because I knew this was going to be a question. I just had the gut feeling, because it's what everyone else asks. But there's never been a court case that has actually addressed this. It's only that we have the Children's Act, which states that within 60 days, you can still terminate the agreement. But then you're going to have to go through the normal processes of the children's court to be like, okay, well, 50, this child is mine, but it's also one of the commissioning parents' children. So how do we deal with this situation? And I'm quite excited to see what a court would say if this was actually brought to their attention, or a matter like this is brought, for them to adjudicate upon. because I think it's going to have a lot of implications on the other aspects of the Children's Act, where it is still very undeveloped. It is still a very new concept. The Children's Act will still need to be developed as the processes go on and court cases and judgments get made with regards to surrogate agreements. But as a general rule, you do not, as a surrogate, have any parental rights or responsibilities towards the child. However, and this is the one exception that I actually do quite like, is you can negotiate contact with a child during the surrogate motherhood agreement. So you basically, as a surrogate, have the option: do you want to have contact with the child after birth, or do you want to follow the clean break principle? You hand over the baby and you both go separate ways. Now, that can be negotiated with the commissioning parents and actually contained within your agreement, your surrogate motherhood agreement, which then, I don't want to say it's the likes of a parenting plan. I don't want to draw the distinction, but, then in the agreement, it says you can visit on birthdays, or what will your designation towards the child be? I mean, the child will not call you aunt, mom, or whatever, So you need to decide the designation that the child is going to know you by, and what contact rights you're going to have. May you call the child? May you only see the child physically on birthdays or whatever? That can all be negotiated prior and actually be concluded in your agreement itself, which for me, it offers, stability, and everyone knows where they are going forth after the birth with regards to contact. I mean, if the surrogate mother wants contact, commissioning parents will allow contact. We know exactly where we're going forth. It's not going to be, to and fro the whole time. When can I see the baby? No, it's not a good time now, or whatever. So that aspect I actually do really appreciate, because I think the surrogate mother still has a bond with this baby. She still carried this baby
for 9 months.
Exactly. She still has an emotional bond. Some people would like to see the child because emotionally that's how they deal with it. Other people follow the clean break principle. Listen, no, we're not willing, and you need to respect both sides for their opinion on the matter. But I must say that's one of my favorite, exceptions within the whole surrogacy process.
That's really fascinating. That's really something that I did not know. Wow. Like, I'm wowed by this. Like, you always learn something new. But what I wanted to ask you is, you now said that the surrogate mother does not have any parental rights and responsibilities. So let's say, for example, there is a situation where the surrogate mother's life is in danger. Can she choose to terminate the pregnancy?
Yes, she can. So the process that they usually follow in this aspect is, it is always, you need to take the life of the mother firstly into consideration upon the life of the developing baby. So if the doctor states that, listen, the mother is gravely ill and her life is in danger to the point where if the pregnancy is not terminated, she will die, then the decision lies with the surrogate mother to terminate the pregnancy. If it is, for instance, and just to add to that, the commissioning parents cannot have a say in this, because you cannot allow a surrogate to pass away due to a baby that's not yet to a stage of being able to be born and survive. So the scales tip completely to the favor of the surrogate. But let's say there is a situation where you have multiple babies. So there's twins or there's triplets. Let's, for instance, use the syndrome twin-to-twin transfusion. If you use that, where the one baby is likely to pass away, and there needs to be a discussion regarding terminating that baby or not, then there needs to be a discussion between the commissioning parents, the surrogate mother, as well as the medical professionals. So then there needs to be some form of discussion, and everyone must be able to voice their opinions, voice what their wants and needs are in the situation, and the surrogate mother will then also still have the election based on what is said, together with the medical personnel make the decision. It's also, you can see there's a lot of situations where you get the reverse. Again, let's say there's 3 babies, but the commissioning parents would only want 2 of them. The commissioning parents cannot force her to terminate multiple pregnancies, to, let's say, reduce a pregnancy to 2 or 1, unless there is medical complications and medical reasons as to why they take that step.
Okay, so as an attorney, what advice would you give parents who are considering to get a surrogate?
So my first thing is, what works for one does not work for the other. So you can ask opinions to every single person in your life. Some people will tell you it's better to adopt. Some people will tell you it's better to get a surrogate or a donor or whatever. You as a couple or you as a commissioning parent, you know what psychologically, financially, and emotionally you can handle. Some people cannot handle the idea of adopting a baby that's not genetically related to them. Some people want that genetic relation. Other people, people with autoimmune diseases and those things don't want that genetic connection with the baby because of a fear of actually passing on a genetic disorder or whatever they might have. So for me is stay true to what you want and what you know you can accept. At the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of opinions and people love voicing their opinions on things like this. We know this, but you're the one that needs to live with the decision and the consequences at the end thereof. So weigh your pros and cons. Is it something I can financially, afford to proceed with? Is it not something I can financially proceed with? Maybe I should hold off for a couple of years. Maybe I should look into adoption more. No one can tell you what to do. You need to stay true to yourself because you know your situation, domestic, financial, all of that. And I think that is the main consideration people must keep in mind is what's going to be best for me and ultimately my child, whether it is my child through surrogacy, donation, or adoption. It's still going to be my child. What's going to be best for my child at the end of the day.
Fantastic advice. Thank you for that. So since this podcast is called Justice in Heels, I wanted to ask you, as a woman-in-law, have you ever felt that you were underestimated purely because you are female?
I wish I had a different answer. I truly, truly wish I did. But unfortunately, yes. And it is something that we as females face on the daily basis. And, if you are of a younger age as well, it's kind of like it's worsened by the fact that you're a female as well. I've been in various situations. For instance, I have male colleagues that can walk into a room, immediately be respected. Immediately there's listened to their opinions. Whereas as a female, you need to struggle and show them you actually know what you're talking about in order for them to start respecting you in that aspect. You get blown off very quickly, silenced very quickly, especially when it comes to older practitioners and unfortunately some older male practitioners. But I can also say I don't think it's something necessarily that they do consciously. I think it's also it's a subconscious manner of dealing with it, which makes it even more difficult to address. Because you cannot, go and say, but you're treating me X, Y, and Z if they don't even realize the actions and the consequences of their actions. So for me, I get it a lot. I'm going to be very honest with you. I wish I had a different answer for the young ladies studying law, but just get a thick skin. You're going to get there someday, and someday you're going to walk into a room and everyone's going to immediately respect you. Unfortunately, we just need to work a little bit harder than our male colleagues. But you know what? That's what's going to take to make us better legal practitioners than our male colleagues because we need to fight for the respect.
Just imagine how proud you will be if you just push through, develop a thick skin, and then eventually you realize, okay, but now I am respected.
Yeah, it is. It gives you actually a reward for all the work that you're doing. And I think that's worth it. You don't get everything handed on a little silver spoon.
Amen. So, Elizma, this was really wonderful. I really enjoyed speaking to you about this very interesting topic. So, can you just tell us where can people get in touch with you or learn more about your firm?
Yes, so my firm is located in Pretoria, in Sunnable, Pretoria. I have social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and in LinkedIn. People can just search Elizma de Waal Attorneys. The one that pops up with a rose gold background, that's my page. You cannot miss it. So they can go and follow us there. We do, interesting tidbits and cases and summaries and all of that throughout the year. So it would be nice for them to follow us, learn a little bit something on the side, of the cases I deal with. And then they can communicate with us on that platforms as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Justice in Heels podcast. If you like this episode, we would love for you to share it with your friends on social media and tag us. As this is a legal podcast, here is a quick disclaimer. The views expressed in this podcast are solely the views of the individuals involved and not those of the firms, brands, or anyone else that we are affiliated with. Till next time, good